In other news, tensions between Pakistan and India are still rising as each side blames the other for cross-border attacks. The international community is calling on the nuclear-armed neighbours to de-escalate the conflict over the disputed region of Kashmir. But so far, there's no sign of any easing.
Tensions have escalated sharply between Pakistan and India since an attack last month killed more than 24 tourists in Indian-administered Kashmir. India blamed the attack on Pakistan and carried out strikes on several sites in Pakistan this week.
We have made the point very clearly that all attacks on the morning of 7th May were against carefully selected terrorist infrastructure, terrorist targets.
Pakistan flatly denies any involvement in the Kashmir attack. It says Indian strikes targeted civilian infrastructure, killing 31. It sees the Indian action as an act of war and has vowed to respond in kind.
We will not hit the civilian population, not at all. We'll refrain from that, but we'll definitely hit their military installations. Military installation, their bases, their forward positions on all the three control line, working boundary and international boundary.
International calls to de-escalate have been growing, with the US and China among those urging restraint.
We urge both sides to bear in mind the larger picture of peace and stability, uphold the UN Charter and other international law, remain calm, exercise restraint, and refrain from taking actions that may further complicate the situation.
We hope that India and Pakistan will prevent the escalation of tension in the region. Our region needs peace, especially to expand economic cooperation between regional countries, and we hope this will happen.
But the political rhetoric and military action shows that the international diplomatic push to contain the risk of all-out war between the two nuclear-armed neighbours has not yet succeeded.
Michael Kugelman is Deputy Director of the Asia Programme at the Wilson Center in Washington, targeting military capabilities in Pakistan and not just what India previously said was terrorist infrastructure. Your thoughts on that, first of all?
I mean, all along, New Delhi has been very consistent in talking about its objectives, and that is that it really is trying to degrade this threat posed by what it describes as cross-border terrorism. And if you go back and look at the strikes that India carried out that provoked this current crisis, or pardon me, the initial military action, it was of unusual scale and intensity if you compare to previous India-Pakistan crises in recent years. The fact that you had targets in Punjab far beyond Pakistan-administered Kashmir, the fact that 9 targets were hit, according to the Indian government. And that scale, I think, is one reason why Pakistan has been so intent on retaliating. Pakistan, of course, has indicated that there were more than 30 civilians that died in those airstrikes, which India claimed were targeting terrorists. So one could understand why temperatures are so high and why the escalation risks are so high.
What do you make of Pakistan's response so far?
Well, you know, with the fog of war element, it's hard to know exactly what it has done to this point, though it has indeed sent some missiles and drones into India-administered Kashmir. It's been engaging in intense shelling across the border. But what it has not done yet is send any military action beyond India-administered Kashmir. And if it's looking for a proportionate response in kind compared to what India did, India's targeting was in Pakistan, Kashmir, but also in broader Pakistan. So this suggests that Pakistan might eventually want to carry out additional actions, military actions beyond India-administered Kashmir. It's unclear if it's going to do that. It says it wants to de-escalate. If it did do that, then I think there's a good chance that India could respond, and then you really have to worry about escalation risks in a big way.
How worried are you? I mean, at the moment, this is limited military activity. Could it develop into a conflict, into a war?
I don't think there will be a war. I mean, the nuclear factor, nuclear weapons are a deterrent. I mean, that's very clear. I think that each side respects the fact that the other has nuclear weapons. I think neither side wants a war. Neither side can afford a war. So I do think that eventually, though it's unclear when, each side will come to a point where they feel that they can declare victory, engage in some face saving, and then be ready to move on. That may require some external mediation, whether from the U.S. or the EU or countries elsewhere in the world, including the Middle East. But I think at this point, neither side seems prepared or in a position or willing to de-escalate just yet.
Yeah, the calls for de-escalation from the international community are falling on deaf ears. Why is that?
Well, I think it's because there's so much anger in each capital. And, India feels that it really needs to get it right this time in the sense that it feels that previously, when it's engaged in limited airstrikes against Pakistan to target terrorist infrastructure, that hasn't actually solved the problem, as reflected in India's view by the fact that you had this terrible attack in Kashmir last week, which it blamed on Pakistan. And Pakistan itself is extremely angry at India because it feels it's being punished with these airstrikes in retaliation for a terrorist attack in Kashmir, which Pakistan claims it had nothing to do with. So just a lot of anger on both sides, which suggests that they're not willing to go for any type of de-escalation just yet. But eventually, I think that could change.
Michael Kugelman, South Asia expert and Deputy Director of the Asia Program at the Wilson Center in Washington. Thank you very much for your time here on DW News tonight.
Thank you.